Hi everyone. Just to say some words about this breaking news today, that the MP, Sir David Amess, has been killed in his constituency surgery in Leigh-on-Sea in Essex. Leigh-on-Sea is a town just outside Southend-on-Sea. I'm familiar with it because my parents actually used to live there in the early 1980s. My father had a parish there. Um, So when I heard the news, I was watching the developments, and sadly, it looks like he's passed away now from his injuries. He was a backbencher, not a household name, but by all accounts, a man who was dedicated to his constituents, and inevitably, people will be remembering what happened to Joe Cox. But actually, there is now a growing list of parliamentarians who have died doing their job. Or being killed rather doing the job. So we look back to Erin Neve in 1979, then Robert Bradford, who was a Unionist MP in Northern Ireland. They were both killed by Irish nationalists. There was Ian Gow, 1990, killed by the IRA, by Irish nationalists. I mean, they weren't directly the IRA. I think they were offshoots of the IRA. Um, Ian Gow in 1990, Andrew Pennington, who was an aide to the Liberal Democrat MP Nigel Jones, um, and Joe Cox, of course, in 2016, and now Sir David Amess. And there's been other MPs who have been attacked. Stephen Pimt in 2010 is one example. Thankfully, he survived. Now, aside from the human part of this, the fact that a man has lost his life, there's a real question of democracy because politicians are representatives, because they are in firing line in terms of often public anger, because they're legislators, because they make decisions on people's lives, they often have to face public anger in this sense. They are far more in communication, direct communication in that sense, to some other powerful positions like judges or business people. You know, they meet their constituents at these sort of surgeries. But the difficulty is this. On one hand, there's the practical side of security questions. And I know that after Joe Cox was killed, there was questions around increasing security at constituencies, or rather at surgeries. But the problem is MPs want to be approachable. They want to be accessible to the people who elected them, and therefore it creates this difficult balancing act of, we cannot have a situation where elected parliamentarians are constantly a risk. I mean, this is the United Kingdom. Um, it's not Mexico. You know, you this we shouldn't end up in a situation where politicians are their lives are on the line because they're in politics. Um, that's an awful situation. And I'm not conservative. I don't support his party. Um, Unusually for a conservative, he was strongly against fox hunting. Apparently, he was a strong advocate of animal welfare. He was an anti-abortion campaigner. So, all these details are emerging of his parliamentary work, and by all accounts, he loved his constituency. Um, the quick response by the public by alerting the emergency services is commendable, but I don't think it should take something like this for people to remember that most MPs, regardless of party, really are in it for the right reasons. I mean, I've often felt concerned that that there's just too much vilification of politicians in this country. It's almost a national sport, and the public do it, the media does it. They're constantly criticised and hammered, and some of that is deserved. And in a democracy, that there must be that right to criticize those in power. But people forget they're human beings. And, in most cases, this man had been an MP since 1983, which meant he will have been re-elected and re-elected. So his constituents obviously had enough faith in him to re-elect him. And what's interesting is often when people make dismissive comments about politicians, like they're all in it for themselves, or when it comes to their own MP, sometimes it's a little bit more charitable. But I don't think it should take a tragedy like this for people to consider that actually they do work hard. They, you know, even if you disagree with their politics, they are mostly in it for the right reasons, with some exceptions. You get corrupt MPs, you get, some who really are self-serving. But I always cringe a little bit when I hear about politicians just wanting to feather the law in this. From a financial point of view, the issue on MP salaries, there's a lot of professions that are paid a lot more. It's not an easy job. Face that constant scrutiny and criticism. Um, it's a demanding job. And now we see another politician has lost his life 5 years after what happened to Joe Cox. So I imagine a lot of MPs will be anxious, but they won't necessarily want to stop speaking to their constituents. A constituency can be over 100,000 people, so it's pretty much impossible to absolutely know the background of everyone that they speak to. Some politicians, some MPs are perhaps more precautious than others. Apparently, David Amess was the sort of MP who had a very open door policy, which is probably why he kept being re-elected. Difficult thing. Um, I mean, I don't want to, in light of this, hyperbole. I'm not saying it's extremely dangerous to be an MP in Britain, but I do think that um, this is not the only time this has happened. It's, like I say, about the sixth time now that a parliamentarian in modern times has died violently. So it's relatively rare, but it happens. And who knows what the attacker's motivation was? I understand the man's been arrested. Whether he was angry with some sort of local issue, whether he was angry with the Conservatives. I know it's Angela Rayner was quick to send out her thoughts to his family. Of course, she arguably stirred up hatred of the Tories with her comments recently. So I wonder, is she now regretting her words? I don't know. But, the tributes is coming across the board. Um, but we're going to be in a very bad place if people think that the right response to anger and resentment is to just resort to violence. Um, I feel very angry about a lot of things, but you can't. This is not a way to deal with things, and it's now a man has lost his life. Um, I don't know if he had children or if he was married, but I imagine he's going to have loved ones. He's going to have family. So it's a dark day for democracy. Um, and it's just going to have to be a balancing act of maybe increasing security a little bit at surgeries. But with there's 650 MPs, it might be practically difficult to have security for every single MP. Um, it makes sense, obviously, you have senior cabinet members, a great officers of state, prime minister, foreign secretary, home secretary, chancellor, but backbench MPs don't have that level of security. So it's difficult to know. I mean, clearly it isn't going to be feasible to just have this bubble around MPs because, their job is to address public concerns and anger. That's a job. Um, but it's a dark day for democracy and definitely echoes of what happened to Joe Cox 5 years ago and the other parliamentarians I mentioned. Um, Erin Nave, um, Roberts, Bradford, Ian Gow, Andrew Pennington and Joe Cox. And there's probably others as well. Those are the ones that I've come across. I've done a little bit of research before making this video. But my thoughts go out to his family. Whatever you think of the Tories as a party or the policies, we have democracy in this country. You can vote them out of office. But to take a man's life in that way, in such a brutal way, um, incidentally, it's only a few weeks. I didn't really mention this, but James Brockenshire, the former Northern Ireland Secretary, former cabinet member, he died, different circumstances, he died of cancer, but only 53. So remember Westminster's a relatively small place in terms of 650 MPs. They're all going to know each other. So that's, for a lot of MPs, this will be a personal blow. I'm sure Mr. Amos was a friend. So from a human perspective, that's going to be hard. And they have to just get on with their work and keep doing what they're doing. It's hard. Um, we talk a lot about mental health and we talk a lot about support that should apply to powerful people as well. If they need perhaps help in dealing with this therapy or something, then that should be something that's used. Um, but clearly, there'll probably be a by-election, and usually in these sort of circumstances, as a mark of respect, opposition parties don't stand. So I think that's right. I think that's appropriate, i.e., that he's replaced by a Conservative, because of course people voted for a Conservative MP, so it would also be respectful in that sense. Um, but that's dramatic news today. So let me know your thoughts.